Hey there, this is Greg. I'm doing some small box assemblages using these cheapy old white jewelry boxes. I guess the kind of stuff that jewelry would come in if you buy it at the dollar store. I got a whole bunch of these at an estate sale quite a while ago, and I decided I'm going to use them for some assemblages. They're actually pretty well constructed. And once I cover them with my old papers, I've got some old comic book papers here. Once I get them glued and covered, they even become a little more sturdy. And here's one where I've actually used the box itself and the lid I'm going to use. Generally, I'm kind of pushing the lid aside. I haven't been using it, but this one is going to have the lid on the top because I want to use one of my old canning jar lids as kind of a frame. I cut a hole in this thing. This is going to frame it very nicely, and then I'm going to put my work, of course, inside. I may even put a, you can see the bottom of this lid. It's a little bit rough looking. I may even be able to glue a glass inside of this and get it covered with glass, kind of protect it a little bit like a shrine. Let me show you a few of the boxes that I've made using these cheap white jewelry boxes. This is one that I did a couple weeks ago. Covered it with some old mapping. I've done some black crayon around the edges, smeared it in with my fingers, kind of as part of the aging process. I've made some partitions in the box. There's a partition up here at the top with an old vintage photo, covered it with glass, and I've kind of given it another mapping paper frame around the edge. The bottom part of the box has got, you know, an old doll, a little electrical piece down here, and some peek holes. I really like using the peek hole idea. Very simple to use. With your box and your floating piece of cardboard, whatever it is that you want to use, I just drill some holes at the top for my peek holes, and my drill happens to be these little, you can actually buy little round drill bits that go into an electric drill, and they act like a little saw. This one is kind of clogged up with pieces of cardboard right now, but it's actually a little circular saw. You can get these different sizes, and you can actually cut great little holes. I go back and sand them with sandpaper, get some really nice smooth edges, and cover the whole piece with some kind of paper, mapping paper, or whatever it is that I'm using. I continue to use glass on most of my pieces. This particular piece is no exception. Another piece here that I've put in, I've partitioned with little pieces of cardboard, vintage picture, a little toy in the middle, and of course glass floating on top. My technique for glass is very simple. I use my box, for instance, with a little piece of balsa wood. I cover the balsa wood with paper. I would cover this balsa wood, for instance, with my comic book paper. I cut it, the balsa wood is so thin, you know, I can cut this with a scissors. I cut it the exact same size so that it'll fit inside this box. I glue it down a couple centimeters from the top of the box, and I go all the way around. And then that forms a neat little lip for me to set my glass right down on top. I cut my own glass, by the way. You can have a frame shop cut glass for you if you want, but it's fairly easy to do. So the glass doesn't sit on top of the box. The glass actually sits down on that little lip that I've constructed out of balsa wood. Most of my boxes always contain my vintage photos. They're like my little shrines to these people that we don't know anymore from the 1800s, very early 1900s, I guess. Same box kind of technique. A little bit of framing with my vintage paper around the top on the glass. I glue everything in with silicone glue, which really holds it together nicely. A little bit of toy action going over here, another vintage photo with some other kinds of cutouts over here on the side. I did put some a little piece of hanging equipment on the back, which I may remove in a little bit. This is one of the few pieces that I did that didn't use a vintage photo. It's mostly just object-oriented with a little toy, a magnifying glass in the middle. And let me grab another one here. Some toy. little vintage photos from an old yearbook that I have of some kids back, looks like in the 50s or 60s. My magnifying glass idea again, shredded money over here on the side, vintage photo underneath. Again, the partition that I've made out of cardboard. Cardboard that I use is oftentimes, it's a fairly heavy cardboard. If you tear apart some old books, the book covers are often made of this kind of cardboard. We used to call it railroad board. I don't know what it's called anymore, but it's really a nice heavy cardboard and forms really nice barriers or sections inside of the box. One of the ideas that I've come up with recently is the use of old microscope slides. Actually, they're not old. They are actually very new to me. I got them at a recycling store. I got several boxes of these. They were about $1, maybe $2 for the box, for each box. And they're the old slides that you would actually use with a microscope. So what happened is I took all the glass slides out of the box, and I was just kind of playing with them one day, and I ended up putting them on top of a photo, one of my vintage photos, and I noticed how they, the little optical illusion that I get when they're put on top of a photo. So I decided I was going to use these slides and actually construct a box with the glass slides on top of my photo. So I've had to do some work with cardboard inside to form a little frame. Glued the slides down on top of the picture. It's very hard to see, it looks like on a video or any kind of a picture, to kind of get this optical illusion, but you can kind of look at it from any angle and still see these people's faces through all these microscope slide glasses. And at the bottom I've done some other, just some other kinds of things that I really liked. Another piece here with a little baby, rubber hand up here at the top. It's my same techniques with paper. And I've got a third one that I've also been working on. Same idea, constructing my form around the glass to actually hold the glass in place. A lot of silicone glue inside which holds all this together. None of it falls out, which obviously you don't want to have happen. Nice, easy technique that I just kind of happened to discover by accident. Another idea on this same line, I've got some old glass test tubes. Actually, I've got quite a bundle of these. These aren't fairly big. These are kind of the short variety. I had been laying them down on some of my pictures also, the old vintage photos. They kind of distort the image a little bit, which I really like. So I thought I'm going to incorporate some of these into some assemblages, and let me show you one of them that I've come up with. Now this is not one of the little white jewelry boxes. This is a little larger box that I had that I've been working on also on the side. You can see the glass. I think you can see the glass test tubes inside. They're kind of laid over this guy's face. They're very well hidden so that when you look down into the frame you can't see any of the glue. Obviously I've kind of covered everything up with this paper framing around the top part of this glass, and then a metal frame around the guy's face, and then some little of the foosball toys down at the bottom. And basically this is the same technique. My papering, my sanding, some of the black oil or crayon, whatever you're using around the edges to kind of age it a little bit. But it's a great idea. It distorts the picture very nicely, actually. By the way, speaking of using other kinds of boxes, I've been doing some other kinds of things besides just the white cardboard jewelry boxes. Somebody gave me this old camera a long time ago that I thought would come in really handy for some kind of an assemblage. I haven't used this part of it yet, but I did take off the back part, which apparently held the film at one time. And when I took it off, I discovered, you know, that there was kind of an indentation, a box inside here that I covered with cardboard, which had been covered with my mapping paper. I set my old vintage photo down inside a little metal frame. Her face is covered with an old key, a little ball bearing over her nose, some vintage lettering down at the bottom. But anyway, just another way of, I guess, thinking outside the box in creating some assemblage boxes. I'm still using up some of the piano pieces that I gathered a couple of years ago when I was a part of the Glean program, which is a local program here in the Portland area that sends artists to the city dump to gather art materials. We did this for about 6 months. I happened to get 3 pianos during the course of that time that I deconstructed. The parts are really cool, actually. These are still the same white little jewelry boxes, by the way, but I've incorporated those piano parts that I ended up with. And one more. These pieces have been particularly difficult to work with. I haven't known really how to incorporate them, but I like them in this particular box. My idea with these small white jewelry box assemblages was kind of to create a standalone project where I would create the assemblage in the box, and then I would actually put a hanger on the back, and then you'd actually hang the piece on the wall as it is, and the project would be complete. But I really can't leave well enough alone because I've started to go another direction with these, obviously. Let me show you what that is. I have a lot of old boxes that, from past pieces that I've kind of deconstructed. I've removed whatever it was that I had in the box for whatever reasons. I didn't like the piece, or I just wanted to give the box a new revision. So a lot of these boxes have had past assemblages in them, and I've decided that what I'm going to do is put some of these mini assemblages inside some of these older boxes, and then I'm going to put a glass over the top. Here's another one right here. The mini assemblage in the, of course, again, the little white jewelry box, some old piano hardware up here at the top. I've kind of floated the box here down at the bottom. Some, I guess you'd call these Joseph Cornell kinds of elements. Yeah, they kind of feel that way to me. This originally, this piece had also been another box, had another life in the past. So, and then the frame itself has been lined with my same mapping, and it's going to fit over the top in this manner, like so. I've got some additional mapping that forms a border around the edge here. So this is basically my new direction. Probably most of these mini assemblages are now going to go into some larger boxes that I've collected. Let me show you a few more. This piece is already finished. It's my small white mini assemblage inside. There's a black background in place. This frame and this white metal frame had held another assemblage way back from many years ago, so I've just reconstructed it. I've glued everything onto the back with silicone. I still need to put hanging hardware back here on the back. Another one over here that's now completed. Everything is glued into place. Glass on the top. And of course there's also glass. There's some layers of glass here. There's a glass on the top, but also the mini assemblage inside has glass covering it. To add a little extra depth to this, I've also put another paper border around the top. Everything basically, well, everything here, not basically, everything here is glued in with clear silicone. Even the papers, even the border around the top, I've used clear silicone, a very thin layer to glue this down. You can glue things onto glass, but you just got to use the right kind of glue. Silicone seems to work well for me. Got to put my hanging material on the back of this. Another one that's already completed. And yet another one that's already completed. So I'm getting a chance to use up some of these old frames, these old boxes that I've had in my back room. Okay, and kind of finishing up some information about my little mini boxes. This is one of the last ones that I'm working on right now. These are my X-Lax ladies in a tiny box, and they're going into a larger box, which seems to be happening with everything right now. This is in a larger wooden box. I've completely covered up with mapping. After it dried, I did a really heavy sanding job on it. Covered a little bit with alcohol, some bluish alcohol dye. I make my own alcohol dyes, by the way, with RIT liquid clothing dye and rubbing alcohol. I've taken a black crayon. You can use those oil crayons to mark and rub around the edges. Add a little bit of aging to all of this. My X-Lax ladies are going to go inside the box. It's all going to fit together quite nicely like this. And then I'll put some hanging material on the back, sign it, and it's ready to go. So thanks for joining me for this session of my mini boxes. We'll see ya.